Hello there, my name is Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And I've got some sprite work in this video. I've been wanting to come up with another character in the same universe as my Captain Jace character. And so to create a new sprite, I'm actually using the stick figure sizing and proportion that I developed when making his sprite. The inspiration for my design is actually a combination of a few things all sort of brought together. First of all, I've been meaning to get more practice with like female designs and feminine proportions, so that's one factor. Another is that I've always wanted to do a character that had an entirely metallic texture. Not really a robot, but more like their skin is just chrome or something. So that'll come into play a little bit later during the coloring. And the final piece of the sort of character design puzzle here was that my pal Mewt Keys, who makes electronic music, had given me a track to use in my videos, which if I've done my production correctly, it should be playing in the background right now. And I thought it'd be neat to work in some quality of that song into a pixel art design. So the song is called Take the Time, which I'm presuming was intended to mean, relax, take your time, that kind of thing. But I've taken sort of a literal interpretation of that title and decided to make my character here what I'm calling a time thief. Someone who can literally take the time, like steal it and also use it as an ability. So I did a bit of a rough sketch first just to get a character idea in my head. And then what I'm doing here with the pixel work is just working on that line work to kind of have a readable form and a few basic costume elements before going to the step of adding in the color and the chrome shading. Sometimes when finalizing line work like this, if I can't figure out sort of a clean continuous curve for a rounded surface, like on her head here, if the two options both look a little off to me, what I'll do is just erase the pixels that are constraining that curve and making it problematic, and just leave it as a broken line. Your eye usually does a good job of connecting the dots to kind of mentally fill it in. And beyond that, it also kind of indicates to me that this is probably an area where the right shading or colored outline will be required down the line to finalize that appearance. I'm beginning the coloring here by filling in the line work with solid tones of color first. And I've chosen to leave most of the body in that base chrome color, where it's just sort of got line work to indicate kind of a bodysuit structure. And then a few pops of color in the gauntlets and the knee pads. Normally I'd start by shading in grayscale, but for this one I just figured the metallic texture would be fairly desaturated anyway, so I'm actually just kind of freehand selecting colors using the HSB sliders here. The light source here is meant to give focus to the side of the sprite closest to the viewer, so the far leg is a full step darker in shading compared to the front leg. In general, I'm working from the light cyan base tone down toward darker and more saturated purple tones to create sort of a gradual rounding of the form here. If you're trying to achieve sort of a higher fidelity sprite design, then it's usually pretty important to use steps of a color gradient to kind of get that gradual shading around a body part. Or you can even use it to augment the line work around a sprite and have certain parts of the outline pop more than others. To put it in other terms, let's say with like freehand or digital illustration, you'd be able to create continuous fades of color and also to have some control over your line work appearance, like having the stroke taper down to a point, for example. But with pixel art, we generally don't have the kind of resolution that allows us to do this sort of thing. Certainly not to taper a line of pixels down, right? But some version of this effect can be achieved by just selecting the right steps of color to kind of convey line weight in certain spots. The number of colors you use is up to you and your style, obviously. Like for this sprite, the chrome texture steps across 6 different tones, including that full black outline. Continuing on with the sprite work, I'm making a cloak here by drawing an outline on top of the sprite and then filling it in with some solid black and a few highlights on top of that. I just kind of wanted to play around with another look, or I guess sort of like a quick accessory sort of thing, and just explore her costuming a little bit. I like the idea of the cloak as sort of an alternate appearance. It's a little bit more inconspicuous than just this full chromed out body character moving through crowded areas. And for some animation work, I just wanted to try like a quick dash sort of pose. I was picturing that if she could steal time, she'd be using it not only to survive, but also as an ability to kind of zip around and, move through time, right? Again, I've gone back to the initial stick figure. I find it easier to kind of rearrange that than trying to cut up the finalized standing sprite in this way. To create the form, I drew some basic line work shapes on top of that skeleton. And this is kind of bringing in some of that sprite technique I played with recently when I made some sprites in the style of the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Normally I would do this step as a silhouette first, but since doing that work, I've kind of been enjoying the efficiency of using shape outlines instead of silhouettes, at least for sprites that use outlines like this. And then the outlines here are filled in with a light pink color. And both these tones, by the way, are the ones that were used from her knee pads. I'm just kind of repurposing them here to give some sort of a bright, glowy looking color that might convey that she's using an ability or that she's like about to dash at the speed of light or something like that. So let's go ahead and do a brief sprite design recap. And then I just want to come back after and share a few thoughts on the animation frames. So here's the Time Thief, who I've named Hex, with, I guess, her very own theme song by Mewt Keys, Take the Time. Here we go. Alright, so for this quick dash animation, there's actually only 4 unique frames. The benefit of a character traveling this fast is that you kind of need to keep it brief and snappy to convey that speed. So from the neutral standing sprite, I just kind of have her lean in a little bit to sort of telegraph that there's about to be some motion. Then we go right into the dash frame. And finally, there's this one where she's just kind of a disappearing blur. And that frame is mostly a copy of the dash frame. Then what I've done is actually just stretched it out and deleted every other row of pixels, as well as dropping the opacity to 50%. And the combination of all that is just to kind of help it fade away a little bit. So pretty simple, but also just kind of fun to mess around with the idea a little bit. And I'm sure we'll see more of this character at some point. Alright, so thanks again to Mewt Keys for the track that became part of the inspiration for this one. If you want to check out more of their work, I've left a link down below. So thank you for watching, and take care and keep it square.